Hey Divi Nation, welcome to a brand new Divi Use Case live stream. And in this use case live stream today, I'm going to be walking you through how you can, or actually 6 ways you can use Divi's new drag and drop file upload feature to boost productivity and help you design websites with Divi. And I'll be giving you some helpful tips and examples along the way. So don't forget to check out the the video description below for a link to our blog post that goes along with this use case tutorial. That will be very helpful. Also, if you want to learn more about the Divi theme, I've provided a link to our product page as well. So without wasting any time, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first off, I just want to make sure I am coming in loud and clear for everyone to hear, that everyone is seeing my screen. Just give me a thumbs up if you would, just to make sure everything's good and up and running. Also, please feel free to ask any questions along the way during this live stream, and hopefully I can get to them as we go along. Let us know where you're from. I always love to hear about where you guys are from, and I love hanging out with you guys. So let's talk it up in the comments. It will be a kind of a different use case today. I'll be showing you some kind of ways you can set up your files and use these different file types to drag them into Divi, do some pretty cool things. And it is always fun to drag and drop some stuff and see what happens. So, all right, I got a thumbs up. Looks like we are good to go on Facebook. And all right, looking okay in YouTube. I think we are ready to get started. Thanks for your patience on that. So if you see my screen right now, let me just make that a little bigger there. I'm actually, this is the blog post that went out today. So if you want to check that out on our blog, go ahead and do that. There's a link in the video description, but this will kind of help walk you through in more detail what I'm going to be covering today. Also, it will have for you the code snippets of HTML and CSS that I'm using in this use case for you to use, because sometimes in the video it's kind of hard to see that code. So it might be helpful to have this up whenever you are following along today. The things that you really need for this tutorial is the Divi theme. Aside from some mock files like MP3s and HTML files and CSS files that I've kind of already have on standby, just to kind of show you what is capable or what this new drag and drop file upload feature is capable of doing. So this is basically all we're going to be doing. I'm going to actually use a pre-made layout. I'm going to use I think it's the design agency pre-made layout, and I'll get to that in a second. So once you got the blog page up, kind of to help you along the way, first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new page, and then we're going to add our pre-made layout. Just call this page test. And I'm going to click to use the visual builder. This will bring up my load from, first I need to choose a pre-made layout. And then from my load from library, mode will pop up. I'm going to scroll down and find the design agency layout pack. And I'm going to go ahead and just use that landing page for this example. All right, so once that gets loaded to the page, we're going to go into our first way to use the drag and drop file upload feature, and that is to drag in custom fonts. So I'm going to pull up my folder of goodies here so that you can see me drag some stuff into here. And actually, it might be helpful for me to go ahead and minimize my browser window here. a little bit. That's not working. All right. There we go. Just so you can see my files over here to the right as I go through this process. Okay, so the first thing is you're going to want to have some font files. So if you do have custom fonts, this is a quick one, nice and easy. What Divi does is it allows you to drag in a font file, and I believe the font file types are, and I'll just check the blog post here, OTF and TTF font files. So that's the ones that are supported. And if you drag those in, you'll want to drag them in one at a time. Divi can't handle multiple font files because it does need to clarify a few things. So if I drag in this Myriad Pro regular font, you'll see that automatically it pops up the upload font. And if you've done this beforehand in like a module or something, it does take a few clicks and you have to actually add a font name, which it already does automatically for you, which is nice. And it also, you know, you don't have to click in here and choose font or anything like that. Everything's basically ready to go. The only thing you really need to do is if you want to change the file name or font name, and then select whether or not you want the supported font weights or all supported font weights. But that's it. It's already done for you. The only thing you really have to do is click upload. And then if I go into a text module here for my header, and let's go to our design tab and over to our heading text. And this is where you would, you know, select your heading font. So I'm going to click on this one. And if you see, I don't know if you can see on the screen that well, but under custom fonts, you'll see the new font has been uploaded and ready for me to use on the page. All right, so just a nice smoother process there for uploading fonts. And if you want to take it a step further, you can go ahead and let's say if I wanted to replace my heading font with that is currently Montserrat, I'm going to change it to the new font. So all I need to do is right click on heading font, click find and replace. And then I want to replace this heading font, Montserrat, within this page. So all over this page, every time a header font is being used, I want to replace it with the new one. I'm just going to go ahead and select it here. And I'm not going to select replace all because it's going to select all accounts of Montserrat being used in the page. I just want to change all the headers, the heading fonts. So I'm just going to leave that unchecked and I'm going to click replace. And there we go. Make sure you save it out. And you can see that that new font has been added to all of your headers throughout the page, which is really cool. I just added that little find and replace, you know, plug there just to kind of, because I think it's a cool additional thing you can do in that process of dragging in a new font. So, all right. So everybody following along so far, we're done with our first one, I think. So we're ready to go on to our next one. I see some thumbs up, and let's see. We have a question from Stella. Awesome. That is my daughter's name. If you add a font this way, is the new font restricted just to the particular page, or is it available across the website? I believe it's available across the website. That is a good question. And I don't even think I tested it, but I'm sure it would be because it does get uploaded to your to Divi. So I think so. 90% sure it does, but I could be wrong. But good question. And I can check that out a little bit later, but I think that it does. So if I save it out, we can actually check it right now. I'm going to go ahead and open a link, add a new page. Let's get this question answered. All right. So the new page, let's see if that font is still available. Add a text, and let's go to text files. Yeah, there it is. So the answer to your question is yes, it is available throughout your website. All right. All right, so let's continue on here to our next way we can use the drag and drop feature. Just so you know, if you're just joining us, I do want to welcome you to this week's Divi Use Case live stream. And today I am walking you through 6 ways you can use the drag and drop feature to boost your productivity when designing websites with Divi. And this will help you discover new ways of setting up, files properly so that you can drag them into the Divi Builder for instant results. Don't forget to check the video description for the blog post link that goes along with this use case. And if you want to learn more about the Divi theme, I provided a link to the product page as well. All right, so let's get back to it, to our second way, which is, make sure, to drag and drop custom CSS snippets to your page. And all right, so this is really cool. I love custom CSS snippets, and if you aren't familiar with CSS, that's okay. Divi is built for you. This is one of the beauties of using Divi, that you don't really need custom CSS to design beautiful websites, but there are times when you want that additional CSS code to take it to another level, and those can be added very easily using the drag and drop file upload feature. So I'm going to demonstrate that here. I'm going to go back to my folder here. And as you can see, I've got some CSS files that I've saved here for easy access. And you can, of course, have your own library of custom CSS snippets organized this way. The trick is to save each snippet in its own file and then name it something that is easily recognizable so that you can readily identify it and then drag it in as needed. As you can see, this one, I don't know if you can read it, but it does say blurb, shadow on hover, hide bottom footer, scale icons on hover. So these are 3 examples that I'm using. And just if you've never created a CSS file, it's really a matter of just opening it in a text editor and saving it as a CSS file, just making sure it has that .css at the end of the file name. And so if I open it in my text editor here, you can see that this is the blurb shadow and hover .css file. And all I have is one CSS snippet that simply adds a shadow to all of the blurbs on the page with and adds a shadow to it when you hover over it. That's it. This next one is hide bottom footer. And this is really simple. It just hides the main footer on your page. And then this one is a scale icons on hover, which basically makes the icon, a little bigger with a simple transition, smooth transition, a cool effect to add to your blurb icons. So those are the 3 files, and that's how they're basically set up. There's no real fancy code you have to add above or below this document. It's just the CSS snippets of code there, and then save it as a file. All right. Let's minimize that. And so now I'm going to scroll down. And let me just publish this page. I haven't published it yet. All right, and I'm going to move my settings menu to above the page there so I can get out the way to show my footer here. And then I'm going to drag in this hide bottom footer CSS file. And you'll see that, if you watch closely, it's just going to automatically disappear once I load it into the page. There it goes. So I just dragged it in, and like magic, my footer has disappeared. So what has happened with the code is really cool. 2 things happen that I really like. One, it adds it only to this page, which is nice because sometimes you only want CSS applied to this page. You don't want it, site-wide. And you can find it by going to your page settings, and then under your advanced tab, under your custom CSS, this is where your custom CSS is, accessible for only your page. This is different from the theme customizer, additional CSS that you can add to the entire theme. So this is where you add it to on a per page basis. And if you look at how this is set up or organized, let me just kind of show you what has happened here. I'm just going to copy it over. I'm going to open up my text editor so you can see it maybe a little bigger. Let me go over here to a blank one. All right, so this is what has been added inside my custom CSS box over there. I'm just putting it in the text editor here so you can see it a little clearer. But notice what happens. It has organized it with some comment tags, which is pretty cool. I really love that. So it automatically kind of will, as you add custom CSS to your page, it'll identify it and kind of put some bookend comments on there to kind of separate it so you can easily identify it later on. And the way it does it is it adds the begin text there, showing you that this is the beginning of the CSS snippet, and then it adds the name of your CSS file here to kind of help you know what it is. So that's why it kind of helps to put some forethought into naming your files before you start dragging them in there. That way you can have a nice, streamlined way of organizing your CSS on your pages, which I really love. All right, so for some reason I'm having some real trouble viewing the comments on YouTube here, so I apologize for that. Maybe I can get that rectified soon. But let's see if I have any questions here on Facebook. All right, very good. Let's continue on. Hopefully one of our team members is in YouTube to kind of help answer any questions. But please don't hesitate to ask those questions as we go along. So that's a cool feature, adding some custom CSS snippets. I'm going to minimize that. You see how it has organized it for you. I'm just going to, I don't need that one anymore for our example, so I'm just going to take it out. Let's look at some other ones. I'm going to scroll up to my what we do section here. And these are where all my blurbs are. And so you can actually drag in multiple files at once, and Divi will handle those accordingly. It depends on the file type. Not all file types support multiple, dragging in of the file, but this is one that does. So the CSS, the blurb, shadow, and hover, and then I'm going to select the scale icons on hover. I'm going to add both of those. Select both of those, and then I'm just going to drag it in. And automatically, I'm going to have that functionality in play. As I hover over, I don't know, it's pretty light, but you can see how the blurb modules have a box shadow added to them on hover. And then when I hover over the icon, it's kind of hard with the blurb settings there. Let me just go ahead and save it out, and then open it in a new tab so you can see the results a little better. So here you go. I don't think it saved it. Hold on. Okay, so you see as I hover over the icon, it does have the hover effect. So that's a cool, just one little quick example of kind of the power of this feature and how it can kind of speed up the process of testing out certain functions or really just the design process in general. All right, so I'm going to go back to my Visual Builder, and let's just real quick go to my page settings and go to the Advanced tab. Under Custom CSS, you can see that it has organized everything for me according to the file name, and which is really nice. All right, let's go ahead and take that out because we don't need it anymore. And let's go on to our next way, which is to drag in multiple images, or single images, multiple images, doesn't matter. Let's check out some cool ways or see what Divi does when we drag some images in here. Okay, some of you probably have already tested it out, and so this may not be new to you, but I do want to show you this feature. Oh, actually, I'm just going to scroll up to the top of the page. When I add this, you'll see, let me go to my image folder, and it does support, you know, let's see, just so I can be clear, the image files are, you know, GIF or GIF, and then JPEGs, and then the PNGs are all supported. And so when I drag it over, let's see what happens when I drag one image over. I'm going to select it and then drag it over. Now watch what happens. You'll notice that I'm not doing that scrolling. That's something that Divi does automatically. And basically what it's doing is scrolling down to the bottom of the page where the image is being uploaded to. So what Divi does is creates a new section, new one column row, and then inserts that image module with the image already loaded in. So, and then opens the image settings modal on automatically, so it kind of sets you up to start editing right away. So it does a whole lot of things for you out of the, you know, automatically, which is nice. And of course, if you know, this may, you may not want it in a new section. If that's the case, then you can just, let's say if I had a section up here that I wanted to add the image to, then I could simply just drag it in to wherever I wanted later, or, you know, it's there if you need it. Sometimes you don't need this feature, but sometimes you do. So this would be really useful for photographers, things like that, videographers, because it does do the same thing with videos. I don't really show you that in this tutorial, but the same thing happens when you upload a video as well. All right, so I'm going to delete that one. And let's see what happens when I drag in multiple images. Let's select all of these. Then I'm going to drag them in. All right, so with images, Divi drags to the spot where a new gallery has been created. And then it creates a new section, new one column row, and then adds a gallery module, and then uploads all those images to the gallery module automatically, and then pops up the gallery settings modal so that you can start the editing process. So really cool feature. Notice though, it is important that you, well, one tip I should say, is to go ahead and optimize your images beforehand to make this process a whole lot smoother. For instance, if you are going to be adding galleries, it's a good idea to, you know, size your images all the same size so they look all the same, and they're consistent. Somewhere around 1500 pixels by 800 pixels is a good size to use for galleries, because the gallery, just so you know, uses a different size thumbnail for the actual images that are in the gallery module here initially, and then uses the larger file whenever you do the lightbox pop-up. So that suggested size kind of does a good job of filling up the screen. That's why I suggested it. Also have a, well, talk about that later, but really cool feature. You can get a gallery up and running very easily. And the next tip I want to give you is to name your files what you want them to be labeled in the gallery, because the gallery will automatically use the file name as the title here underneath each of your gallery images. So make sure you name them what you want them to be named in the Divi module. That way it makes that process a lot smoother. All right. All right, so let's keep it rolling. Let's go on to the next one. And we're about halfway done. So I do want to welcome anyone who is just joining us. I want to welcome you to this week's Divi Use Case live stream. And I'm walking you through 6 ways you can use Divi's drag and drop file upload feature to boost productivity when you're designing websites with Divi. And this will help you discover new ways to set up your files properly so that you can take advantage of this feature and drag them into the Divi Builder for instant results. And don't forget to check out the video description for a link to the blog post for this use case. And if you don't have the Divi theme yet, there's more info on our product page. Check out the link to that as well. All right, let's get back to it. We're on number 4, I believe. Yes. So let's drag in some MP3 files. So let's go to my folder here. And I have a folder of MP3 files and WAV files. Both file types are supported, which is really cool for you podcasters out there or any people who are needing some to use the audio module. This is perfect. So what Divi does is, much like the image, a single image, it will create a new, well, you know what? Let's just drag and find out what happens. So that's part of the excitement, right? Okay, I'm going to erase my section with my gallery, and I'm just going to drag in one MP3 file. All right, let's see what happens. All right, so Divi will scroll down to where the file, or excuse me, the module is located, creates a new audio module, puts it inside a 1-column row and inside a new section. So same kind of process with the images, videos, things like that. All right, and then what it does is, and if I click on my audio toggle there, you can see it's already loaded my file, uploaded it for me to my module. So that's basically what it does. And then it pops up the settings here automatically so you can get started with the design process. And just for fun, let me just go and add these 3. This is kind of one thing I wondered, and you may be wondering it as well. If I add multiple files, and I'm adding 3 more, an MP3 and 2 WAV files right now, and it'll take a second for Divi to do all of that magic, so be patient. Notice that it scrolls all the way down and opens up the audio settings. Well, which audio settings is it opening? It's the very last one that has been added, the very bottom one on the page. So if you were wondering, which one you're editing at that time, that's the one at the very bottom. All right, so I'm actually not going to start editing them this way, but I'm going to, I have a CSS file. I'm just going to show you what's in there. And basically this CSS is going to style my audio modules. And I've just, you can find this CSS code in the blog post, but this is just a quick example to show you. You may be accustomed to using CSS like this and not depending heavily on the Divi module settings or the visual builder that much. If that's the case, you can really take advantage of this. But sometimes, like for instance, maybe you want to add some CSS to style this audio module, at least the elements that aren't directly accessible within the visual builder, like the position, excuse me, like the position of the title, the position of the artist name. Maybe you want to put the title over here on the top left or something, and the artist name here on the bottom right. Well, you'll need some custom CSS to do that. And if you have a saved snippet ready for access, you can have it ready and then drag it in. And just to kind of, for more dramatic effect, I'm actually going to erase all of these. And I am going to, I hope this works. I'm going to add all of these, or select all of these at once. So I'm selecting 4 MP3 or audio files, and then also a CSS file that's going to style these. All right, let's see what happens. I'm assuming this is going to take a little while, but all right, so it's doing a lot of thinking. And so what it's going to do is add my 4 new sections with each of them a new row with the module inside, and then they're automatically styled. So there you go. And then the audio settings pops up for the last one. And this was obviously not something that matches this layout. I'm just using this as an example, but this custom CSS, was already set up to apply to all the blog modules, all the audio modules on the page. So feel free to test that out on your own. Grab the code from the blog post, save it as a CSS file, then drag it into a page that has some audio modules to see how that works. And I do want to check out how it looks in the page settings. You'll see that it does name it or tag or comment it out for me and calls it the MP3 CSS file. And then there it is. All right, I'm going to take that out, save it. And then I'm going to just kind of erase this stuff. I no longer need it, but that's how kind of a example of how to use CSS with a module to style it, as well as what happens when you drag audio files into the builder. All right, so our next one is our number 5 would be create reusable blocks of code that can be dragged into your page for instant implementation. And this one's probably the more complicated of all of them. Actually, it is. And so it's all about the setup and make sure you have everything in place and understand how kind of they work together. But it's really easy to learn. And if you at all go on the web, I mean, if you're not a coder, if you don't know HTML or CSS, and you kind of depend on those blog posts out there to help you, this is a kind of great way to think about collecting those snippets of code and kind of organizing them so that you can have a process that's easily streamlined when designing with Divi, so you can drag those in there. All right, I've said enough. Let's see what this looks like. All right, so if I go to my folder here, the first reusable blocks of code, that's kind of like this, what we've been doing here is like with the CSS, we have these blocks of code that we can easily use over and over again with Divi. And so this is kind of the same process, except now we're going to be attaching an HTML file with a CSS file to kind of, or create a reusable block with those two elements already in place so you can have instant results when you drag them in there. All right, so the first example would be exporting code like from the web, like somewhere from CodePen. So if you're familiar with CodePen, it's a place where people display publicly and privately some examples of code and functionality that you can go and search for, things like that. And I'm just kind of using this one as an example by Andy Tran. And let's see, this one is basically going to add this little about me, or I guess you can say a call to action. That's the word I was looking for. that will allow you to find out more about that person. And all it does is on hover, it expands and has a link. It's real simple. I'm just using this as an example. All right, so every code pin will have, your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It will also have your, it may have either CSS or SCSS code. You want to go with the CSS code, and we'll get to that in a moment. But unfortunately, you can't be dragging in JavaScript files. So that's out of the question at this moment with the drag and drop feature. But if you do know what you're doing, you can add, embed certain scripts inside of an HTML file to handle some JavaScript functionality if you want to. But for now, just keep things simple with HTML and CSS. And what you can do is go down here and click this export button. It's way at the bottom right. And then you click this export.zip. And then what that's going to do, I'm going to go to my folder here. And there's my zip file. And once you unzip it, you can look at it. It'll have a CSS file, SCSS file, an index. This is your HTML file. That's wanting me to open it up in Chrome. And then the license and README. So really only two files you want are the HTML, which is this one. And then if I click in my CSS folder, this style.css file. So if I open up my style.css file in the editor somewhere. Okay. All right, you can see that it's set up nicely and ready to go. There's really nothing more I need to do other than possibly renaming it something that's going to help me label it. The next thing I want to open is this index.html. Now, if I open this one up, this one has some things that I really don't want to be embedding or adding to my page within a code module, which is what happens when you add HTML. And this is the doc type HTML head. This is kind of all the structure of a page. Like, you don't want all this. So what you would do is just kind of erase this stuff. You just want the meat in the middle here, the divs and all that for this example. And once you do that, you just save it out and it should be ready to go. If that's too complicated for you, or if you don't want to bother and don't really know what to erase, you may just want to go ahead and copy this HTML that's in the HTML box here in the code pin, and then save it as an HTML file. I think that will work just as well. One thing that I do want to mention though, sometimes if your code kind of has all these breaks in it and things like that, it may not render properly within Divi. So a good thing, a rule of thumb is to go ahead and minify it, take all the line breaks out so that it's just nice and clean before you actually load it in. So, all right, so once that's done, all you need to do is, I'm going to go to you can erase all those other files. Let me change my view. Go back to my page here. And so I'm looking to add this, move my page out of the way. So it's going to show up here at the bottom of the page. So I just wanted to make room for it. So I'm going to add both my HTML and my CSS. And there it does. See, it's down here. It just pops up automatically, implementing it into my page. Adds the code to the code module here and opens it up. And then if I go to my page settings, custom CSS, you'll see that it added all that CSS for me and then commented it out for me. All right. Now, for our last, well, let me check out questions. I really hope you YouTubers out there are getting some questions answered by our team. I'm still unable to see those for some reason. Okay. But it does, okay. All right, let's check out some more questions. Das says, I need your CSS files. They are on the blog post. You're welcome to get those from there. Just make sure you save them as a CSS file before dragging them in, and you should be good to go. All right, let's continue on. I do want to get to this last one, which is something you probably are already familiar with the process of, but I do want to mention it. And that is, how you can create a library of Divi page layouts, of JSON files, that is, on your hard drive that you can drag into your builder for faster development. And this is just to be clear, the Divi library already handles, your ability to save page layouts and things like that already that you can access later on. Excuse me. But I'm talking about if you are a developer and you are adding or building a lot of sites and you want to save layouts to your computer so that you don't have to depend on an install, like a Divi install, to hold all of those wonderful page layouts that you have designed. You can keep a library of them on your computer. That way you can have easy access to them and drag them into your new pages on a page-by-page basis. All right, so let's go to my folder of JSON files, and I really only have one. So just as an example. And the process of this is important because you need to know how to properly export the page layout before you add it or build up your library. It's always good to test them beforehand before you forget about them. Let's say I want, I could save the whole page layout, obviously, but let's say I just like this. I have a new design. This is a pre-made design, but let's say I have a new design and I just like this header section. Well, what I can do is I can delete everything but this top section. And to make that easier on me, I'm going to toggle my wireframe mode. And now I'm just going to start deleting the sections that are underneath my header section. There's a lot of them because it's a landing page. All right, so there it is. I'm going to toggle back my desktop mode. And so there it is. All I want is my header section. So I'm just going to save this page layout. And Divi only supports the dragging in of JSON files of page layouts. So if you have, it won't work for like in Divi, you can save a row as a you can save a row as a what's the word I'm looking for? As a kind of a layout, but not necessarily. But it's can't think of the word, but you can save rows and modules as well, but this applies to the whole page. So only page layouts can be loaded here. So I'm going to click the portability icon. And then I'm going to click export. Well, it's already on export, and I'm just going to name it whatever I want, header or something like that. And then click the export. Now that will, download it for me. And now once it's saved, and I already have one saved here, just to show you how this works, I'm just going to erase that. So now I don't have anything on my page. I'm going to save it. So with that saved JSON file of that page layout with only a header in it, I can just quickly add it back to my page. All right, so what happens now is it automatically kind of does a check whether or not I want to replace existing content or download a backup before importing, which is helpful. You definitely need that. You don't want to be dragging in things and then completely erase your page without checking with you first. But if that's how you want to proceed without replacing content and without downloading a backup, then you can just go ahead and click import, and it will load that header in there for you. And you can see how this would be, very helpful in the process when you have a library of headers or pieces of pages or whole pages that you can just, like a building block, just drag them in here as you need them. So pretty cool. I hope that was helpful. And all right, so check out questions real quick. Again, sorry I can't see them in YouTube. I hope this was helpful for you. And this is it. A great way to use the drag and drop file upload feature to, drag in files and speed up the process. And hopefully you found a way to kind of start organizing files to make this even more of a streamlined way of designing websites. All right, let me double check here. All right. Wrong file. All right, well, that's it. Just checking to make sure I got everything. All right, that's it for you. That's all I got for you this week. Thanks for, staying with me throughout this use case live stream. I do want you to remember to subscribe to our blog, newsletter, YouTube channel, and like us on Facebook so that you don't miss out on any future freebies, layout packs, or live streams that are coming up. And our next live stream is actually going to be this Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern. And we will be back here next Tuesday with another Divi Use Case live stream. So you want to check that out. And don't forget, if you want to contribute your own knowledge, skills, expertise on the Elegant Themes blog, now's your opportunity to do that. There's more information in the video description on how you can contribute your own unique content. Thanks again, you guys, and I look forward to seeing you in our next video.